So, is it back yet? Can everybody hear me? Did it come in okay and everything? I don't know why they did that. I don't believe they stopped streaming it. And we were commenting on it. We were talking on it. And these jackasses, they didn't allow me to do that. Man, that irritated me right there. So let me know if this came back through, if it's actually like working or whatever, this and that. I cannot believe they did that, man. They booted me out of my stream just because we were watching the damn race or whatever. What if? They suck for that one, man. They suck. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's like we the reboot, man. I cannot believe they did that to me. Is it coming in clear and everything? Well, that lets me know we can't watch races. All right, we won't do that again. Because they're gonna be like, hey, you can't go and watch our. Why not? Yeah, I'm about out of juice and everything anyways, man. This is crazy. That is crazy. I cannot believe they did that to me, man. Never happened before. I was streaming and they said, YouTube has ended this live stream. Well, eventually they'll do something to it. Whatever. Man, I know it, man. That's crazy shit. YouTube ain't never did me like that, man. What kind of, dude, that's crazy. That's crazy. Man, that's cool. Don't worry about it, brother. Don't worry about it. Hey, we all learned something because I didn't know that they could do that. Because I watch a lot of people's content and videos. I didn't know that they would make me not allow me to watch a race on just, I mean, it's done. Like the races are done. It's already happened already. So for us to turn around and just play a race that's already raced already, it's not like we was broadcasting it. We were just playing it. The hell? What up, MAGA girl? You breaking the law, they gonna time you out like Uber. Exactly. Oh, yeah, that was a crazy race. Man. That was nuts. What's up, MAGA girl? Oh, yeah, most of them copyright protect. And see, that's the thing, man. For us to just sit there and watch it, it was already done. And I'm like, come on. YouTube, YouTube can go to hell on a scholarship. That's funny shit. YouTube can go to hell. So there's a 10-second. Oh, so you can only do it for 10 seconds. So I have to play it in 10-second spurts or something like that. I can play it for 9 seconds, pause it, play it again, pause it. I can just keep doing that. All right. They think they slick. All right, I see them. They fucking got me. They got me, man. That's cool. I'm gonna try to see something real quick. I'm gonna see if I can go through this. Save. There we go. I'm gonna try to do another video, but I'm not playing the same video we just played. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna play a different video. Let's see what else we got in here. No, we're not gonna do that. Hold up. YouTube. Yeah, I ain't doing that again, man. And exactly, it's on YouTube. So I'm like, this damn copyright shit, man. Maybe they'll. Yeah, I was gonna play the 4x4 men's, but nope, not doing it. I'm not doing that shit. Nope. Hold up for a second. Let me find some. You rolling 60? Nah, I'm not doing that. Ooh, I see something that says Uber is over. It won't exist in 5 years. Let me not mess with that. Hold up. Let me see something. Okay. I'm gonna play this one. I'm gonna see. Yeah, musicians, content creators take 10 seconds to play at a time. Yeah. I know it, man. YouTube actually kicked me to the curb. And I knew they didn't like me. They ain't like me in a long time. They've been looking for a reason. All right, look at this. Watch this right here. Watch this.
Uber's not going to exist in a few years, as it's becoming clear that Uber is in very deep trouble.
We're going to see if they
after
kick me
more
out
than
for this.
3,000 layoffs, the closure of dozens of their offices, and the company's stock value falling by 2/3 in only a year, it's becoming very clear that Uber is on its final legs. But how did such a promising company sink so low? Why is their stock continuing to fall, even after the company has finally managed to become profitable? What made the Uber empire crash down into the ground? Well, the first reason lies in Uber's business model. You see, from the start, the company's general way of doing business is by acting as a middleman between drivers and passengers. As we all know, a user simply enters their location and destination, and then a nearby driver can accept the trip. Once the trip's over, the payment is done through the app, and no money changes hands at any point. After the trip, both the drivers and passengers give each other ratings. And at first, this business model seems great. It's completely revolutionized the taxi industry. Uber is a much more convenient way of getting a taxi compared to all the other options. With just the press of a few buttons, you don't have to go through the hassle of calling up a taxi company. However, while this looks great on the outside, this business model is much more sinister than it first seems. For starters, Uber prefers for their drivers to be viewed as independent contractors rather than actual employees, meaning that technically, Uber doesn't have to pay any of their drivers a minimum wage, nor do they have to pay sick pay or any other kind of benefits whatsoever. Uber also doesn't own any of the vehicles and won't cover maintenance, fuel, or anything else. All of these burdens rest on the shoulders of their drivers. And from a purely economical standpoint, this business model is revolutionary. It's great for Uber because they don't have to pay their workers nearly as much as the traditional taxi services. However, Uber's problem was that lots of this was actually illegal. In fact, from the get-go, Uber's practices were illegal in San Francisco where they originated from, something that would quickly come back to bite Uber. However, back when Uber was founded, regulators hadn't caught on to their tactics yet, and so
and see, that's why I tell everybody, these terms of services are all void or voidable contracts. We try to tell people that from the get-go. Hey, man, you guys got to abide by the TOS. No, we don't. They're all illegal. These are illegal business practices. A contract can be void or voidable. We went over that on one of my videos. New people, new drivers who think they know business, think they know shit. No, because if you agree to it, you got to do it. No, you don't. If you agree to doing something on the contract has to be legal first off, and it can't be a void contract. It can't be a nullifiable contract. It has to be legal. And that's why videos like this explain to people that if you're doing something illegal, it's illegal, even if we haven't caught on to it yet. That's why I do what I do and I drive as an independent contractor. Uber can be pissed off, Lyft can be pissed off, but what they're doing is illegal anyways. Keep listening. Hold up, let me go back a little bit.
Services. However, Uber's problem was that lots of this was actually illegal. In fact, from the get-go, Uber's practices were illegal in San Francisco where they originated from, something that would quickly come back to bite Uber. However, back when Uber was founded, regulators hadn't caught on to their tactics yet, and so Uber had a very small period to monopolize the taxi industry and become too big to stop. And so in order to take over the taxi industry, the company would make many sacrifices by taking on heavy financial losses early on, all in the name of continuing their expansion. The only thing keeping Uber afloat was the large investments they were receiving, as Silicon Valley was betting that Uber was going to monopolize the modern transportation service industry. And if Uber was able to secure a monopoly, they would eventually become extremely profitable. If they were the only option on the market, Uber can then jack up the prices without worrying about being undercut by the competition.
And that's the thing. If they did that, also, what would happen? Sherman Antitrust Act would kick in. If you form a monopoly, the Antitrust Act kicks in, regulators find out what you're doing, and you get booted off. You get broken up on purpose. In fact, a monopoly was necessary for Uber due to the extremely thin profit margins that their business model gave them. However, the company's lack of profitability didn't faze Uber or their investors. They were putting all their chips on the rapid growth. And for a while, this paid off. In just a few short years, Uber services had been rolled out across the world. This was a genius strategy in a lot of ways, and this was all coming from one man known as Travis Kalanick, one of the key founders who created Uber. And it was also because of Kalanick that Uber became such a controversial company. But back in the early years of Uber, and the negative press towards the company wasn't anywhere near what it is today. In fact, at the time, Kalanick was a business prodigy. Under his leadership, Uber successfully expanded from a small San Francisco startup to a global sensation. And the strategy behind this was fairly simple. As we've discussed, Uber's business model was genius. Genius in the sense that they didn't have to pay their workers properly. And at the same time, Uber would offer insanely cheap deals to entice people to use their services. It wasn't uncommon for your first Uber trip to be free, or for the company to give you referral bonuses if you managed to get your friends to try out the app. These marketing methods exploded Uber's user base, with all of this only being possible due to the giant influx of angel investors flowing into the company. Without the investors, Uber would be nothing. And as Uber started catching on, the app would only become more and more popular, becoming a central part of millions of lives, allowing Uber to have substantial bargaining power later down the line. It seemed like everything was perfect for Uber. They had established themselves so tightly in modern society that it became so much harder for a city to ban or regulate Uber. This aggressive and borderline illegal strategy led to unprecedented growth. And that's what happened in Minneapolis. Minneapolis was trying to get the drivers. The drivers were trying to get more money out of Minneapolis. Uber says, well, we're going to leave. The politicians were like, well, if you leave, our city will just crumble. I mean, you guys are pretty much too deeply integrated into our city just to bail out and leave. And that's what that Governor Tim Walz guy, he's, like I said, he's in bed with Uber. He's probably a damn angel investor too. People just throwing a ton of money into Uber, getting money out the back end of it without nobody really realizing who's truly the owner of these companies. Now, when Uber started taking over to this degree, you don't hear anything about Lyft just yet. Lyft should be coming up.
It wouldn't take long for the consequences to catch up with Uber, because Uber's aggressive expansion had given Uber a lot of enemies. The first of these was San Francisco's local government. After the government started noticing how Uber was skirting regulations, they sent the company a cease and desist letter with substantial penalties if they did not comply. The notice threatened $5,000 fines for every trip and a possible 3-month jail sentence for every day the company continued operating. Now, for most people, this would have completely destroyed the company, but not Uber. Instead of abiding by the government's demands, Uber just continued operating. As Uber had already entrenched themselves so deeply into San Francisco, they were now coming to control the entire transportation market. Knowing how much power they now had, Uber released a press statement that snubbed the orders, stating, "Uber is a first-to-market, cutting-edge transportation technology, and it must be recognized that the regulations from both city and state regulatory bodies have not been written with these innovations in mind. As such, we are..."
So Uber basically says we're above the law. Uber says we could steal your tips, steal your fares, operate how we want to operate. We don't got to listen to your little local ordinances. We don't got to do nothing. But they try to tell drivers, you've got to abide by our TOS, the illegal TOS. This is what Uber tells you. You have to abide by our illegal TOS, but we're not going to abide by the laws already on the books in the cities that already got these laws going. So how can Uber say we're going to be illegal, continue to function illegally, be above the laws that you guys got written, but you guys can't do us like that because it's a contract?
We are happy to help educate the regulatory bodies on this new generation of technology. This early statement from Uber was symbolic. It summarized their entire business model. Uber completely rejected the law and had an almost pompous attitude in saying that we are happy to, quote, educate the San Francisco government. However, this incident would only be the first of Uber's many.
And hey, just like we're happy to educate riders about cash rides, we're happy to educate you guys about what Uber is really doing. They happy to educate the government. We're going to educate the government on how to start treating us as Uber now. We're going to educate you on how to regulate us. Well, guess what, riders? We're going to educate you guys on how you can get a ride. Because the shit we dealing with right now, you're not going to get a ride like that. We're going to educate you. We taking a play out of Uber's book. We're going to educate you.
Brushes with the law, and this was all trickling down from Kalanick's leadership. Before he founded Uber, Kalanick previously started a company called Scour, but he had to shut it down after he was fined billions for copyright infringement. Kalanick never paid the full amount, of course, but this showed that he wasn't afraid of breaking the rules, and breaking the rules was exactly what Uber was doing. After establishing themselves in 2011 across the US, the taxi industries were certainly not happy with this. How could they compete with Silicon Valley funded, below minimum wage drivers who were completely outcompeting the taxi industry? The entire US taxi industry realized that if they couldn't put a stop to Uber, all of them would be out of business. Because of the pressure from these taxi organizations and other industry leaders, new legal measures were enacted across 15 major US cities, which included rules that seemed to be targeted directly towards Uber. For example, the government made it illegal to use a GPS as a meter for calculating drivers' fares. Additionally, cab drivers using their phone while driving was now forbidden, even if they were only using it for the Uber app. However, this didn't faze Uber. They'd already bypassed the San Francisco government. The Uber leadership realized they had so much power over the transportation industry that nothing could hold them back, not even the government. But one thing the company couldn't ignore was a class action lawsuit from over 350,000 former and current Uber drivers. The 2013 lawsuit suggested that Uber owed the drivers a minimum wage as well as sick pay while working for the company. This case would then drag out for years. Uber would use the best lawyers possible and eventually settled out of court with only a small portion of the claimants for around $20 million. These issues slowly became incredibly common for Uber, and the company was now starting to hemorrhage a lot of money. However, for now, this didn't matter. All that mattered was that Uber would expand across the world and monopolize the taxi industry. If they could do this, they would be $1 billion company.
They would be $1 billion company. Right now, they're almost $1 trillion company. They did everything that they wanted to do outside of the laws, but yet they got the nerve to sit up and tell drivers, you can't go around our TOS. You have to abide. I'm telling you, Uber thinks that they're a part of the government. They got Tony West out there, Kamala Harris is there now, and now you got Tim Walz. Uber thinks it's already a part of the government. Why do you think Tony West would leave Uber on August 17th coming up? Why would he leave Uber and run to the White House? Because they want to force the White House to allow this company to keep growing in a monopolistic way that they're already growing. When they sit up and they say, oh, you know what? We're not going to abide by none of your rules. We don't care about being, shut down. We don't care about you guys charging us $5,000 per ride, 90 days in jail for every day we operate. We don't care about that. We're going to keep doing what we do. But yet these raggedy motherfuckers want to sit around talking about we can't do cash rides. You can't take a ride from the airport unless you do it on the app. Who do you think you are? They think they're the government. That's who they think they are.
Of course, by this point, Uber was nowhere near being a profitable company, but this isn't exactly unusual for tech startups. The general model for these businesses is to operate on a loss for multiple years in exchange for user growth, as once you've built the client base, the business can eventually be made extremely profitable. This is the same with WhatsApp, Discord, or like how Amazon was running on a loss for years before it came to dominate the economy. And it seemed like Uber was following this trajectory, or so it seemed, because there were a few key reasons why this dream would never come to fruition for Uber, which leads us on to the second reason for why Uber is collapsing, and that point being that they actually failed to ever gain a monopoly.
This is where Lyft comes into play.
If you've been following my videos, I'm sure you know how suspicious I am of mainstream media, because oftentimes mainstream media can be the biggest impediment to understanding the truth and keeping you stuck in ideological bubbles. Ground News shows you how breaking news is being covered across the political spectrum. They do this by gathering news from competitor was launched. Uber make up the entire market. Ground.news/moon to try Ground News for free or subscribe to get unlimited access and support a small team of media outsiders working to make the news more transparent. Now back to the video. At first, Uber really did make up the entire market of this public transportation method, which is why Uber was finding so much success during the initial phase of its operation. Uber's system was the first of its kind. It was revolutionary. Until a competitor was launched, Uber essentially had a monopoly on this type of business model. Shutting down any kind of competition was key to ensuring longevity for the company. And if Uber played their cards right, it was possible for them to keep the monopoly on this kind of public transportation. This could be done through methods like making deals with taxi companies, or by offering better wages and service prices than any of their competition could afford. However, this wasn't the case. Uber's leadership was infatuated with the idea of disrupting the taxi industry rather than securing their foothold in the market. And it was because of this ill-advised mindset that competitors soon began popping up, and Uber would start to lose their footing as the undisputed king of public transportation apps. The main competition came in the form of Lyft, the second ride-sharing app and Uber's long-standing rival. Uber was Coke and Lyft was Pepsi. Lyft was marketing themselves as the underdog and a friendlier alternative compared to Uber. Lyft would focus on reducing the anonymity between drivers and passengers, while also making user trip statistics as detailed as possible. Lyft was also prioritizing the implementation of extra safety features for their drivers, such as yearly background checks and a mandatory anti-sexual assault training program. But Lyft wasn't the only one. Soon there would be a bunch of apps all competing for Uber's market share, such as Bolt, who focused on the European, Latin American, and Near East markets. You see, in recent years, Bolt has expanded their operations to 45 countries and over 100 million customers. While these similar companies are all facing problems with legal regulations, their approach to expansion was much less aggressive than Uber's. Along with this new competition, Uber was also having issues making their entry into other countries. The legality in some countries made it either difficult or completely impossible for Uber to operate in some areas. Because Uber is a direct competitor to taxis, the app is banned in many locations. Germany, Portugal, and Italy have all partially banned Uber, while places like Denmark and Hungary have completely outlawed Uber, mainly due to the app stripping money that could be instead going towards taxi organizations as well as the government. And where Uber has been banned, other companies have now stepped in to fill the gap. For example, in Budapest, Bolt has thrived where Uber has been outlawed. Even in Denmark, where ride-hailing services are universally banned, Bolt has a fleet of e-bikes for hire. Not to mention Bolt Food, which has taken over the European markets by storm. A consequence of all this competition is that it has severely disrupted what was supposed to be Uber's endgame. This solid competition has killed any dream that Uber once had of a full monopoly on the ride-hailing industry. This was essential for Uber's business strategy to work. Without a monopoly, their plan is missing a crucial aspect.
And the thing is, that's why they don't like cash rides, because we talk about Sherman antitrust. We talk about the fact that if they do become a monopoly on American soil, they're going to get broken up by the government anyways. This is why I think Tony West and everybody's running there, because they're trying to still have that dream of claiming they want to be public transportation. If they can become public transportation and not like a private company, then they can kind of overstep that Sherman Antitrust Act. Places like Lyft won't exist because they'll crush Lyft. Anybody knows they can crush Lyft. They won't do it because right now that keeps them within the realm of the law as far as they want to go. Private drivers like us, we're the ones that can go out and really disrupt the market by talking directly to riders, by giving people different prices, by having teams in our city, 10 or 15 drivers on your team. If there's 5, 6 teams in the city, just think, if there's 5 of us, 15, you know, if it's 5 teams of 15, that's 75 drivers. So now you go up to 10 teams of 15, and then you go to 20 teams of 15. As long as you keep having different teams of 15 drivers, everybody's helping out each party of riders. Uber and Lyft can't take over because everybody's going to be texting us and coming to us. They'll be like, hey, Jeff, I need a ride. You know what? I can't do it that day. Let me text you somebody real quick. I'm going to still get you picked up that day. Nobody's going to Uber and Lyft. That's who the real fight is against. It's not against, other apps. It's against the drivers that they're playing like slaves.
But it wasn't just the competition that stood between Uber and a monopoly. As everywhere Uber expanded, they would cause unrest, protests, and violence, which would soon become the third reason for Uber's downfall, their public perception. You see, their reckless expansion was leaving a wake of destruction. Uber's continuing war with the taxi industry was playing a massive part in this. On January 26th in 2016, over 2,000 French taxi drivers protested Uber's presence in Paris. They did this by blocking the roads, which quickly brought the city center to a standstill. And what began as a relatively peaceful protest quickly turned violent. Over 20 taxi drivers were arrested for crimes like assault and arson, all targeted at Uber drivers. But it was only until recently that the full details were uncovered on how far Uber had gone to instigate the growing tensions and violence coming from taxi organizations. Mark McGann, a whistleblower and former Uber lobbyist, gave a clear window into Kalanick's and the company's tactics by leaking a set of documents that was coined the Uber Files. Thousands of these documents were leaked to The Guardian and later published in spring of 2022. The Uber Files detailed a plethora of reckless and negligent decisions coming from the company's upper management. And the name that came up the most in these leaked papers? CEO Travis Kalanick, who was quoted as saying this about the violent protests in France, quote, "I think it's worth it. Violence guarantees success. And these guys must be resisted, no? Agreed that right place and time must be thought out." Uber's...
See, look at that. I think it's worth it. Violence guarantees success. These guys must be resisted. Agreed that place and time must be thought out. So if we're saying violence generates success, that means me cussing these motherfuckers out all the time generates success because I'm verbally violent with their ass all the fucking time. And I think it's worth it. Just going off on their ass is kind of worth it because it gets people to realize who these people truly are. They are not for drivers. They're for their business model. Their business model is to enslave people so they become elites of mobility, elites of travel. They don't care about your car, your family, your body, your neighborhood. They could care less about any of that shit. And if we just come in and we use their same method, we don't care about your terms of service like you didn't care about our laws. You want to come in and say, oh, violence is worth it. It guarantees that we're successful if people get violent. Then we're going to start talking to riders directly and we're going to get violent about making our money. We're going to get real serious about making our money. Hey, you know what? I'm not going to do this ride for $14, but I'll do it for 30. Oh man, we pay like 37. Hey, I'll do it for 30. They'll fuck around and give you 40. We got to come out just like they came out. If we're going to take over this industry, we got to act like them. Like I said, I used to be corporate for a long time. Corporate people are cutthroat. If they want to be cutthroat, we be cutthroat right back. We can't be sitting around, oh, I got to abide by the terms of service. I can't be cutthroat. I need to just do this right, man.
His mission has always been to disrupt the taxi industry. However, the Uber files make it clear that Kalanick and other executives of the company put the mission of agitation above the safety of their drivers, not to mention the public. Uber's questionable reasoning behind sparking violence in the streets was that it would put pressure on regulators to inhibit taxi companies. Protests would lead to anti-taxi publicity, which would then cause regulators to sway towards Uber's side. However, this is a key reason that Uber is currently in deep trouble. The singular focus that Kalanick brought with him was excellent for the company's expansion, yet he was more of a wartime leader rather than a peacetime one. And so once the time came for Uber to consolidate their hold on the transportation industry, they had already built up too much bad blood with the wrong people. The taxi companies they fought for years weren't very interested in making compromises once they knew they could survive Uber's innovations. All around the world, violence was erupting between taxi drivers and Uber drivers.
And it's kind of like us. We know this is why I'm glad for the whole summer. I fought hard all summer, but I know we can survive. I did cash rides over the summer. You know, I had other streams of income, like, you know, the channel. I had people help me out over the summer. I fought my ass off this summer. Just like the taxi drivers said, we know we can deal with the onslaught of Uber's technology. We can outlive their technology. I showed myself this summer. For 2 months, I didn't have that black truck on Uber. I showed how I can live without Uber in my life. And if you can, I said, Pedro, what Pedro needs to do is show that he can live without DoorDash. Quit talking about that shit. Show people how you can make money without it, how you can get around doing it. Me, I was talking about Lyft the whole time. I didn't have too much to say about Uber because I didn't drive Uber for 2 months. So I didn't have to talk about that shit for 2 months. I even looked at Lyft stock all summer. I didn't look at Uber stock. We look at Uber stock every once in a while, but my whole focus was to get away from Uber to show people you can live life without them. This is what people have been trying to tell folks about Uber for years. They are a cutthroat company. They do not care about your community. They don't care about you. They got Kamala Harris on their team now. They got, Tony West on their squad now. They got Tim Walz on their squad. He was a politician. I did a video last week that said how Uber pressured him to veto drivers getting paid better. They even said they put pressure on Governor Tim Walz to not pay drivers more by doing something he'd never done before in his career. He vetoed a bill that was in favor of Uber. When I'm dropping these videos, I know they're not very well like videos by, the powers that be at YouTube, whatever. So my shit's never going to go viral to that degree, but I still fight every day towards what we should be fighting for, which is to make drivers stand up for themselves. Don't think these terms of services are done to benefit you in any way, shape, or form. They don't do that shit for y'all. You got to go out and make your own money.
Places like Cancun and Mexico, Uber drivers would actually be hunted down and even murdered by the Mexican taxi mafia. However, the Uber files make clear that Uber has no problem with this. They will take advantage of these seemingly isolated incidents, all to be on top. For example, in early 2015, an Uber driver was assaulted by some masked men armed with knuckle dusters and a hammer who were believed to be taxi drivers. Uber's regional executives discovered the incident and exchanged emails about how best to use the scenario to their benefit. The victims in these cases were encouraged to file a police report by Uber with the aim of getting it shared with the press. One part of an Uber executive's email discussing this incident had this to say: "We keep the violence narrative going for a few days before we offer the solution. You see, all the violence, all the tension was just optics for Uber. They would incite violence and then do their best to spin the blowback to their own advantage. But if Uber was willing to incite violence to sway regulators, what else were they willing to do? Well, like all major corporations, Uber had an army of lobbyists that were eagerly waiting to put large sums of money into the right politicians' pockets. And as usual, this was extremely effective. There have been many instances of countries or cities moving to ban Uber, then pulling out at the last minute.
And if you don't believe that Uber would use the media to come up with a way to sway people to make more policies that benefit Uber, look on the professor's channel. The professor just did a video either today or yesterday. It's a video I won't do because it is one of those just like when they were doing videos, don't do cash rides at the airport because it's dangerous. And Uber was paying people to put those videos out. Don't do cash rides at the airport. It's this and it's too dangerous. And they were trying to get people to say, hey, we're cracking down on cash at the airport. Professor put out a video. What was this video about? Two dudes who were doing a cash ride and happened to rob the driver. Now, they say it was a Uber or Lyft ride or something weird like that. Then they said it was converting over into a cash ride when they asked them to go somewhere else to do something screwy. All of these stories are sold by Uber to politicians to say, hey, we need to outlaw cash rides. We're going to use this violence to help us outlaw cash rides. Look, this guy was trying to do cash ride and he got robbed. He got carjacked and robbed trying to do a cash ride. We need to outlaw cash rides. It's not a cash ride. Just like guns don't kill people, the people with guns kill people. Just like giving a cash ride is not dangerous. It's who you're giving the ride to. These people summoned him in an Uber. Why were they on the Uber app to begin with if they were violent people? They were on the Uber app when they summoned him initially. They were trying to do a change ride or something like that. These people should have never been on the Uber app to begin with. And I don't think the professor kind of went deep into that situation on his channel talking about it because he's selling the same narrative Uber is selling without him even realizing he's selling that narrative. He's talking about how the guy got carjacked and how he did that and how, like, no, let's talk about the fact that these are people who Uber don't vet and allows to get on their apps, whether they're using gift cards to get on the app or somebody else's account to get on the app. Private rides to me are the safest bet. They don't want to say private rides are the safest bet. Nothing ever happens to us that has routine clients, routine people that we hit. Thank you, Maga Girl. I appreciate that. Routine people that we deal with every day don't carjack us. These are routine people we deal with every day. Routine people that fly in town we deal with every day. People we pick up to and from work every day. We get carjacked by the people who summon us through these Uber apps who have not been vetted before. That's what they won't tell you in these stories.
But even when this method of financial incentivization worked out, it was still a massive expense for Uber. And whenever these attempts did fail, it ended up becoming more money that Uber sent down the drain. Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash combined have spent over $200 million attempting to force through a law that would strengthen all their grips on the gig economy. Known as Proposition 22, this would give additional benefits to these independent contractors, but the bill would ensure that workers are not labeled as employees. Uber even directly campaigned for this bill by advertising for it in their app. Despite substantial efforts from worker advocacy groups to prevent this proposition passed in November 2020, and for a moment it seemed like Uber's multi-million-dollar legal gamble had paid off. But only 6 months later after this verdict, the entire ruling was deemed unconstitutional and was subsequently nullified. This meant that Uber had wasted tens or potentially hundreds of millions of dollars, all for nothing. And to make matters even worse for Uber, this failed lobbying fell through during the height of the pandemic, when Uber's cash flow was already tanking due to the low demand for transportation. But one of the worst scandals for Uber were the allegations that would surface against a number of the company's top executives. In 2017, when a major sexual assault allegation went public, it would go on to further tarnish Uber's reputation even more. You see, earlier in the year, a blog post was written by former Uber engineer Susan Fowler, who alleged a culture of toxicity, harassment, and discrimination at the company. Uber responded to the outrage by ordering an inquiry into the assertion, and evidence was found that many of the company's executives were indeed complicit. But what many didn't suspect was that this behavior went straight to the top. Kalanick, along with 20 other top-level employees, were implicated and forced to sell all their Uber shares and immediately step down. Now, for a company that spoke so highly of modernization, it was a massive blow to their public image, especially due to many of the public's fears of sexual assault with Uber drivers. Kalanick was already on thin ice for his aggressive company growth policy, and this incident was just the final nail in the coffin for his career at Uber. But since his departure, things really haven't gotten any better. Just last year in 2021, London moved towards bringing much tighter regulations against Uber. The new legislation states that Uber must pay a minimum wage to the over 70,000 drivers in the UK, while also being required to provide holiday pay. This government order is incredibly expensive relative to Uber's standard payment model, and will further eat into any of the profits the company was hoping to make. Which brings us on to the fourth and final reason why Uber's in deep trouble. They just aren't profitable enough anymore. You see, all the legal fines that they have to put out internationally continues to hold back their profit margins.
Now, this was in 2022, 2023 when this video came out. Now, in 2024, they're trying to claim that they're profitable. All year, they've been claiming that they're profitable. We're profitable. We're profitable. They're overcharging all the riders, underpaying all the drivers, and they're creating this huge profit margin. And with that profit margin, they're actually paying off all their lawsuits. Drivers, we are the ones paying off the lawsuit. When you pick up somebody from the airport and that person is charged $100, that $100 goes on your 1099. It goes on your 1099 as an earning. Uber takes out fees. So when you walk away with $35, you just paid $65 in fees to get $35 in actual earnings. You paid for that lawsuit. You paid for it. That $100, Uber don't pay for these lawsuits. The drivers are paying for these lawsuits. You get that $100 on your 1099. In that $65 they take away, that's legal fees, Uber fees, insurance fees, whatever fees, fuck around fees, unfuck around fees. Everything is in that money. And you're walking away with $35. That's why you see people with $124,000, $130,000 on their 1099s, but they're like, only like 40 grand went into my bank though. We're all paying off all of this shit. We're paying it off. That's why they're laughing and applauding and clapping all the time. This is coming out of our pockets. It's coming out of our earnings. They call us earners, not driving partners. They call us earners. We're earning all the money to pay off all the shit they're doing, and they're laughing all the way to the bank because they're saying, hey, all we can do is just charge this guy 100, pay the driver 35, with the 65 that goes toward that legal bill. Some of it goes toward the legal bill. Every driver is paying legal bills. The moment we turn around and say we're doing nothing but private rides now, that's it. How are they going to earn money to pay for their legal bills? Now they're going to start going downhill. That's why you see both of these stocks tanking. A lot of people are realizing the game. We're being billed for the earnings. We're being billed and we're not even earning the money that they're charging for. So we're going out getting the money ourselves. Uber's, you guys got to follow the terms of service. You illegal ass apps. Y'all forever unconstitutional, forever in court being selling, always paying restitution. And you got the nerve to tell me I got to listen to your illegal TOS? Come on, man. Shit, that ain't happening. Not over here.
and these margins were either thin or non-existent to begin with. The pandemic also hit Uber especially hard, as demand for ride-hailing services was falling sharply. Although the company has somewhat recovered in recent months, it certainly can't be called smooth sailing. Surprisingly, Uber managed to make a profit of roughly $50 million in the last quarter of 2021, but they still have lost billions from their stakes in other companies. And this newfound profitability is mostly a result of the price hikes that Uber has been implementing into their app. In response to the growing issue of driver shortages, Uber has pledged to raise their fares by 5% in London alone. And if other locations follow the UK's lead in forcing Uber to treat drivers like employees, this will only mean more money lost for Uber. All of these problems just won't go away for Uber, and this is killing their worth as a company. Uber stock is currently sitting around $30 a share, but just a couple of years ago in early 2021, this was $60. And although Uber's recent profits could be seen as a good sign, it's still a long road to secure sustainable profits for the company. And that's why investors are pulling out of Uber. They've seen that Uber has failed to reach the monopoly it was destined for, and because of this, they're looking for alternatives. Although despite everything, there could possibly be a light at the end of the tunnel for Uber. Most of the company's problems are coming from their drivers, while the self-driving cars are coming around the corner, and these problems might just be temporary. A fleet of autonomous vehicles would add some much-needed stability to Uber's business model, but even this possibility might have its drawbacks. Right now, Uber doesn't have to pay any kind of maintenance or even fuel costs for the cars on their payroll, since that's all paid by the drivers instead. Uber would have to take on all these costs themselves if they switch to autonomous vehicles. Additionally, self-driving cars are a technology that still needs years of work before being truly safe. So even though this looks like a quick fix, it won't be materializing for Uber anytime soon. And this is a fact that Uber certainly knows all too well. In fact, in 2020, they pulled nearly all of their capital out of self-driving car research, even after spending billions on it. The program was already in jeopardy after a lack of results. When one of Uber's prototype cars struck and killed a pedestrian in 2018, it was only a matter of time. But the incident still caused them to pull out of their ongoing research. And unfortunately for Uber, they don't have the money to burn on research anymore, which is why the future is looking incredibly doubtful for Uber. After over a decade of seemingly non-stop controversy, violence, and chaos, the company's teetering on the brink of collapse, and only time will tell whether they can outlast the storm. But without a monopoly, self-driving cars, or mass deregulation, the company's survival seems more and more unlikely with every passing day.
Yeah, right. That right there, man. And with us sitting here in 2024 now, a lot of us starting our own little private businesses, all of us having our own private client bases, all of us finding ways to market ourselves and everything else. I don't think Uber and Lyft's going to make it that far. Once investors find out, because all they're going to do is try to push legislation to get rid of us as drivers. They're going to say, if you get caught doing a private ride, you're going to have all these fines and fees. Yet when they were told not to operate, not to do business, because they was going to get charged $5,000 per ride plus $90 days in jail, they didn't even flinch. It was like, so we still going to keep doing rides. And they just kept doing rides. They didn't care. They said, we don't care what y'all talking about. We're above y'all law. And eventually the law just stopped chasing them. The law's like, whatever, man, they're too big for us to even chase. We ain't dealing with this no more. And that's why I tell people, keep going out there fighting for your money. Keep doing exactly what it takes to make it. We are the drivers. They're trying to get rid of us. They're trying to pay us as less as possible while they make more money as possible. They've got a lot of money they lost. They have screwed up a lot of money over the years. They've messed up a lot, billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. They've just lost over the years screwing up. And they want us to earn money to pay for their screw ups. They want us in the cars taking less pay while they're charging people more money. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. So you got to talk to these riders, man. Get these business cards made up. Everybody got to get out there and get it, man. And like I said, it's almost 11 o'clock. I got to go grab this other phone real quick because I need to actually drive tonight. So I'm going to cruise and grab this other phone. Then I'm going to eat, take me a nap. I'm going to get up and drive tonight. I'm going to see exactly how this goes. But while I'm out, man, we've got to market yourself. I got a whole stack of business cards I just put in the truck before I broke my phone. Whole stack of cards in there. I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready to do it. But if we going to get out there and do it, y'all, let's stay unified. Stay 300 all day, man. We the 300. Stay 300 all day about it. And let riders out there know, hey, man, I appreciate you. Time to wake up. Thank you, brother. Thank you. I know, man, they end up booting us off that other stream. That's cool. We can always bring it back. We can run it back. We got the reboot. But guess what? The 300, they never going to be defeated. We're going to keep bringing it back and keep bringing it back. Make sure this section of the video, what I just played, the reboot, it's short. It's only 38 minutes, 40 minutes. This is the video you want to share on Facebook and YouTube so people know exactly what Uber is. Let them know how they even got their foot in the door. because a lot of people think this is some happy-go-lucky company trying to help the community. These were a bunch of crooks from the get-go, and they still in court. They still got somebody up in the White House right now trying to buy their way in to get out of paying fees and fines and paying for drivers. We're going to keep the pressure on them. Let people know. Educating everybody about this company that's in our neighborhoods every day is the key to letting people know. Pay your driver. Deal straight up with your driver. If you want to help your community, you want to help out rideshare as far as drivers and riders go, this is how we do it. This is our industry. The tech they're using, these are a bunch of crooks. Man, we're going to do something major, man. So I'm going to end this video. Make sure this is the video right here that we let people watch. This is the one people are going to say, oh, that's really what they